This is Mellissa Thomas for Florida National News. We are here at Rollins College where we are preparing to enter the Martin Luther King Vigil. This is an annual event that's held here at the college, and the keynote speaker will be Judge Victoria Pratt. So stay tuned right here at FloridaNationalNews.com, not only for her keynote address, but an exclusive interview with us at Florida National News. We are here with the one and only Judge Victoria Pratt. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've been basically kind of revolutionizing the legal system in your own right, and speaking across the country about the importance of procedural justice and being able to restore the people's trust in the legal system. So kind of tie that into the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and what he was doing with the civil rights movement.
So Dr. King in his speech, What's Your Life's Blueprint, his first step talked about restoring people's sense of their somebodyness. So it talked about a person having a sense of dignity, respect, and this somebodyness, which really talks about a person's deep-seated root understanding of their value, that their life means something. And so when we talk about procedural justice, it's this idea that if people perceive, if they believe that they are treated with dignity and respect and fairly by the justice system, not only does it increase compliance with court orders, but it increases the public's trust in the system, and it also increases compliance with the law, which is revolutionary, because that's exactly what we want. We want the law to be relevant, but we also want to help people transform their lives. And this idea that if people see the justice system as a legitimate authority to impose rules and regulations, that in fact they will abide by them. And so when we talk about this, Dr. King to me was truly a pioneer in procedural justice. It's just taking the criminal justice system decades to kind of catch up with these ideas and these principles that we have a responsibility to restore people to their communities. Yes, we have to hold them accountable. We should. But that the justice system almost has this fail-proof method of stripping people of their dignity and treating them disrespectful, and at the same time diminishing their sense of worth. And so now we send this person back into the community and expect them to be productive members of society. And so we all have a responsibility. You're talking about revolutionizing, but we all have a responsibility to bring our gifts and our talents and our moral compass into the marketplace where we stand. So it's this idea of seeing people. And my job doesn't just end when I get a conviction, but it almost begins there. How do I help a person who has mental health? In fact, that the entire family has a history of mental health issues, but everyone in the family happens to be addicted to drugs. Why? Because when the men turn 18, which is when the first signs of schizophrenia start to show up, someone says, oh, I'll just smoke some marijuana and that'll stop the voices. And then it leads to heroin, because heroin has the exact same impact or effects that the medication has. So what happens when we begin to look at this person and treat the underlying cause? That is what we really need to be focused on. If the system is meant to rehabilitate, deter, and not just consumed with punishment, because we haven't punished anyone if in fact they come out and they do the same thing. And we haven't punished them because they don't see the system as a legitimate person. It's just, well, it's an unfair sentence. So what you did to me, there's no reason for me to reflect. We've in fact made the offender the victim again when we've over punished them and haven't treated them appropriately for what in fact the offense was. And even some of our quality of life offenses. I mean, I was a municipal court judge in the city of Newark, which is the largest city in the state of New Jersey. But so many of those quality of life offenses, we're ticketing people for living in the public, smoking in the public, eating in the public. Well, the public is their home.
Exactly.
That's where I live. And so legislators also need to begin to think differently. I mean, we get these laws because somebody is driving their car and they look at the city park and they're like, I don't like all these homeless people living there. Mm-hmm. Let's make it a crime and make the judges give them 30 days in jail. What have we accomplished? What have we accomplished? And then we send them to judges and say, I want you to apply a criminal justice approach to this social problem. It can't work. It can't work because the elements aren't there to dissolve the actual reasons why they are coming to court. And so for me, I love this idea of having an opportunity to speak to young people because they become policy makers. They are the next levels. I want them thinking about it right now. I want them to be thinking about what happens when I create this law that impacts Miss Betty, who's been holding down the entire tax base for this portion of the city. That impacts whether she can live here or not. And when we get rid of or evict Miss Betty, it's not just one person. It's an entire family, an entire line of people who are responsible, she's responsible for. And so I want them thinking about this when they're judging. What do I see before me? What led this person? When a young person comes before you, first-time offenders, what could have possibly drawn this child into this space, and seeing people as salvageable. So for me, this is when we need to begin to have these conversations. This is when we need to begin to tell them, this is what you will see. And please understand, begin to get involved in your communities now. And for me, as the head of the community court, we couldn't do the work without the community. The nonprofits in the community have been doing this work for years. So when they were done with their mandates or what was required of them for court, they now had to go back into the community and back to these nonprofits who were responsible for these folks. So also calling those nonprofits to task. And this is how you're going to help them. You put people on the bus to drug treatment? Here's 5. So being able to use the justice system to really deliver justice.
Absolutely. And you touched on the final question a little bit. I remember in your interview with Marie, you mentioned you first wanted to teach, and then you realized that wasn't quite the way that you were going to change the world. But then you ended up going back into teaching now, because now you're at Rutgers Law School. So can I talk about that?
I left Rutgers Law School, but it's so interesting. I didn't get into law school the first time. So I went and started teaching, and I just realized I was like, I'm not going to be able to change the world from this place. Other teachers can, but I just knew that wasn't, and that I really needed to be able to immerse myself in this system. And do what it was I was called to do and not be afraid to do it. So many, and I always say this, attack that thing that you are afraid of because it is in there that you will impact the world. It's in there. It's not the stuff that's comfortable. It's not the stuff that's, you could do with your eyes closed. No, it's in the stuff that you have to take a deep breath and say, I'm afraid and I'm going to do it anyway. So I think that teaching and sharing is just an opportunity to really get people to think differently. And the justice system, it's an institution. And what do institutions do? They are meant to perpetuate themselves. They are meant to protect themselves. So then when you go into them and you start saying, let's do something a little different, what do? They turn on you and they say, no, this is not how we do things. So it's kind of our responsibility to make sure that the institution's mission is being met, so.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your bravery and facing all the dragons. We look forward to seeing more.
Thank you so much.